Welcome to Leaders Lead Podcast. Are you ready to conquer your challenges and achieve greatness? Join us as we dive into inspirational stories of industry leaders who have overcome adversity and reached new heights. Get ready for electrifying insights and captivating conversations that will ignite your passions for success. This is your go-to show for empowerment, growth, and leadership. Buckle up. Leaders Lead Podcast is here to take you on a transformational ride.
We'll jump back into your episode in a minute, but first let me ask you something. Are you great at what you do, but it still feels like no one really sees you as the go-to expert in your space? You're showing up, maybe putting out content, speaking on a few podcasts, but the visibility, the growth, the income, it still feels out of reach. That's exactly why I created the Experts Blueprint. It's a step-by-step system that I use to help coaches, consultants, and purpose-driven experts finally get visible, grow your loyal audience, and turn their message into income. Inside, I'll show you how to craft your story so people actually remember it, build a platform that works for you 24/7, and create content that builds trust and moves people into action. If you're ready to stop being overlooked and start getting the recognition, the results that you deserve, join the waitlist by emailing me at info@tonytaylorinspires.com. Let's build something real. Let's get you seen. Welcome back to your episode. Hey, welcome, my friends. Welcome back to Leaders Lead the Podcast. I am super excited. If you're listening to this show, you are in for something very special. I know the episode before I told you that we were changing directions. We're going to be talking to some amazing people that are doing some healing, people that are doing some research for healing, and people that are searching for healing. I realized through my journey of leadership and entrepreneurship that there was something bigger, and this is it. The first episode where we're talking about psychedelics and the integration of psychedelics and the safety of it. I bought somebody that I've admired from afar to the podcast, Nina Izel. How are you doing today, my friend?
I'm doing great. Thank you, Tony, for inviting me. I'm so excited to be on your podcast, and I'm looking forward to this conversation.
I'm excited to have you on here. I woke up this morning, I was super excited. I was just like, man, I get to meet a celebrity, somebody's work that I've been following for a very long time. I looked in some of the DMs. I don't know if you noticed this, but we've talked before. I've asked you some questions about some stuff, and I was actually at a friend of mine, a mutual friend of ours, and I saw your book, and I was just like, oh man, this is so incredible, because I was just so excited that I've been having a lot of coincidences in my life lately, or well, I wouldn't say coincidence, but I feel like the universe brought us together. That's what I'm trying to say. Can you share a little bit about your background and what led you to plant medicine and healing?
Yeah, absolutely. Wow, such a long story. So I will try to make it in a nutshell. But basically, like so many people who become healers and teachers, I think your own suffering is that kind of motivates you to step on this path. And that was the case with me. When I was a child, I was dealing with a lot of anxiety, chronic pain, different things that Western doctors couldn't really find an explanation for or a remedy. So basically, they just gave me painkillers, and that was kind of the treatment that they could offer. So I kind of took matters in my own hands, and I was studying psychology originally. That's I graduated from the university in the major of psychology. But during that time, I worked with people addicted to heroin who were living on the street. And I kind of realized that a lot of things that I learned in the university, it wasn't very useful or effective, supporting these people who I thought need help the most. So I just kind of branched out into alternative healing, holistic healing, yoga therapy, energy healing, NLP, breath work, movement, medicine, like 5 rhythms. So I tried a lot of things, for myself too. I was like, it was part of my own self-discovery and healing path, and also looking for effective tools, to help other people. And that brought me to shamanism about 15 years ago, which was a totally new area for me. Like, I grew up in Europe, in Hungary. At that time, my country was still part of Russia. So we had like a communist regime, which was like very anti-religion, anti-spirituality, very materialistic. So I was kind of in search for some answers that those frameworks couldn't provide for me. And this is how I come to shamanism. And when I started to dig a little bit deeper, I discovered that this is like the oldest healing methodology. Shamanism is like 100,000 years old or more.
Wow.
And I was like fascinated that how something could survive for 100,000 years when we have no written um, kind of things about it, right? We have no books. It was an oral culture where people were teaching the next generation, by speaking to them and telling all the stories. And there was nothing basically recorded. And I think we all know how indigenous people were persecuted and killed like all over the world, and their belief system and their rituals and were kind of annihilated, and people were trying to wipe it out, and it really struck me that they couldn't succeed. So like, even though the oppression, even though there is no written books or whatever, it just survived, and everywhere I traveled extensively in the world, and everywhere I could find indigenous healers and shamanic practices that were passed down through the generations. So I was just super interested what people did before we had pills, before we had the GP that you could go to, before we had a hospital. Like, humans existed way before on the earth. So what did they do for healing? And that was kind of my main curiosity that brought me into shamanic healing. And I started with, mostly with the Red Road, which is the shamanism of the Americas, and certain rituals, for example, the Sweat Lodge or the Vision Quest, Moon Dance, Sun Dance, these kind of rituals I participated at the beginning, and it opened a door for me to a very different belief system, a very different way of life, and that I quite resonated with and I quite like. So I was going deeper, in this path, and 13 years ago, I just had this calling. I had this opportunity to go to Peru, to the Amazon jungle, and do a plant medicine dieta with the ayahuasca. And I knew nothing about ayahuasca or sacred plants or psychedelic healing for that matter. So I was completely naive, but I had just such a calling, and I knew in my heart that I have to go and do this, for some reason. And people who knew me, I grew up in a city, in an apartment. They were like, "You're going to the jungle where there is no electricity," and stuff. Like, I was like, "Yes, I am going." So yeah, that's how I had the first trip to Peru, and probably we'll talk about it a little bit more. But I was like so excited, and I had all this expectation what was going to happen, and it was nothing like I imagined. Like, they always say that you always get what you ask for, but not in the way that you imagine, and I think that's quite true. So yeah, that's how my journey started.
Wow. And I'm guessing that was with the Shipibo people, right? Is that how you say that?
Yes, it was the Shipibo lineage who are one of the guardians of these traditions with the ayahuasca. There are several tribes who work with this medicine, but yeah, that's where I ended up with.
That's interesting. I'm gonna jump around a little bit because you kind of brought something up with that happened. Made me recollect something that happened yesterday. It was so interesting. I have some Bopanzana tea, from there. And it's so interesting. I was doing a meditation retreat, and in the middle of the meditation retreat, I heard the words Bopanzana. You should take Bopanzana. You should ingest Bopanzana. And so I got some. And so one of my friends sent me some, and it's so interesting. Yesterday I had just poured it, and then all of a sudden on my what is the thing, my Amazon, my music player through Spotify, my Alexa started playing the Bopanzana song, and I was just, and I don't have, trust me, I don't have the Spotify Premium, so I can't pick the songs. They just come at random, and I'm just like, oh my God, like what does that mean? That means that all I can interpret was that means that I'm on the right path. I was curious, what was your personal turning point when you realized that this actually was your life's work?
Yes, I think it is. But, at the beginning, I never intended to bring it into my practice as a therapist. It was purely, I was interested for myself, to help myself. And I never imagined, that this is something that will turn out to be like a career path for me later. Um, so what I was struggling with, since I was a child, when I got my first menstruation cycle, I just had this tremendous amount of pain that I would just vomit and pass out, basically. That would be it, and I couldn't go to school. I couldn't even get out of the bed the first day. It was just this excruciating, debilitating pain I was in. And the doctors, as I mentioned earlier, they examined me, like they ran all the tests. I was in hospitals, and they couldn't find anything wrong with my physical body that would indicate the amount of pain that I was in, that completely took me offline. So yeah, so they put me on contraceptive pills when I was 13, and just opiate based painkillers. But I would still be in bed, I would still not go to school. Later in my life, I would not go to work, like I was just completely debilitated. And since I can remember, I was thinking like it has to be a reason that I'm in so much pain. Like, I mean, I know other women who have pain with their cycle, but this was something beyond that I ever heard of, or I was just like, it has to be a reason. I believe that there is a reason, and if I could just find a reason, I can resolve this issue. And as I mentioned earlier, through holistic healing and a lot of therapy that I did, like my situation improved a little. So the pain on a scale of 1 to 10, I was like 10, and it would go down to maybe like 7 or 8. But I would still be on pills. I would still take the first day off of whatever I was doing. So I didn't want to be in pain. Of course, I didn't want to take pills till the end of my life. I didn't want to be, debilitated, and take out of my everyday activities every month. So I think when I went with the ayahuasca, that was my main concern and my main intention to discover, where is the pain coming from and why I'm in so much pain. Now, the first dieta that I did like 13 years ago helped me to see, that there was a lot of ancestral memory that came down on my family lineage, on the female lineage, a lot of abuse of women that I'm sure many people can, connect to it, not just my family. And for some reason, those memories were stored in my womb space. And every month I would bleed, the memory of the pain that was coming down on my lineage would be activated. And I would feel that pain, that compounded pain, right, in my physical body. So that was like the first thing that I learned, through the medicine. And then the medicine helped me to clear and to let go a lot of these memories and pain. So when I came out of the first dieta, the pain level dropped like 80%, and that was like,
Wow.
I was like, wow, like nothing I did so far for 20 years had such a great effect as this one. So I'm just gonna keep going to this direction because I had such a big result, and I could mostly leave the painkillers, like I would still have some months that it would be very intense, that I would take some pills, but many times, the pain wasn't as strong anymore, and I could just lay down and breathe and kind of navigate through it. So the intensity of the pain really, really dropped, after that first experience. And as I started working, continue working with this medicine, actually, long story short, because what happened was that even though the intensity dropped, I would still have occasions, like some months, that it would be like ferociously returning, and I just didn't understand, like, why is this happening? If I clear these memories and 1 month I'm better, the other one I'm worse again. So what's happening? Like, I was a little bit confused. So I just kept working with the medicine. And then a couple of years later, after one of my experiences, I had childhood memories come back about sexual abuse that I went through when I was between 7 and 12 years old. And anyway, long story short, it's a very complicated story. But apart from the abuse, I went through a type of mind control or hypnosis, if you want to say, that is very easy to do with children, especially. And this type of mind control, the result of that was that it was set up in a way that as soon as I would start to go towards the trauma, my mind would just put up more and more defense mechanism around the memories. So I could not access the memories. And it was very weird because I'm a therapist. I help many people with sexual trauma. I'm extensively trained in trauma healing and sexual trauma healing. And I was aware that I have a lot of symptoms of somebody who had sexual trauma, but because I didn't have the memories, and then I had this experience with the ayahuasca that it was like ancestral, I was thinking that it's not something that happened to me, but it was something that I inherited, through my lineage. So once I had my memories come back about the abuse, that was like a very, very difficult experience. I believe that without this medicine, I could have never reached those memories because of the type of mind control. And I was, not conscious when the abuse happened. They used some substances. So I didn't have that type of visual memories, and the mind control prevented me to reach the memories. So my whole life I was kind of circling around this issue, and I was feeling that there is something there. I had such a calling from very early age that I have to figure this out. I have to find the answer. I have to find a solution. That I just knew that there's something there. So it wasn't very surprising when I got my memories back, but still it was a shocking experience, because when people go through this, and this is actually very common with sexual trauma, especially if it happened during childhood, that you just naturally dissociate and you don't remember, and in your psyche fragments and your mind fragments, and put this wound, separates from this wound, because it's just so difficult to process in the moment. But in my case, on top of that was that type of mind control that I couldn't access. The harder I tried to access, the more defense went up around the memories. And I feel that my work with the medicine and other sacred plants allowed me to chip away of this type of mind control slowly but surely. And at one point I could break through and recover those memories. When you go through something like that, it's a very weird experience, because even though I knew that this happened almost 30 years ago, but in a way it was like it's happening to me now, because I'm just remembering now, and my body remembers, and the emotions that I felt during that time were coming back. And so it was just a very weird experience, from this perspective. And it took me some months, to integrate that experience, and I had to reach out to other healers and teachers to support me in that. And when I went through this process, the pain that I had, like, 100% vanished from my body.
Oh my
Like,
God.
gone. It was just gone. And since then, I don't use any medications. I don't even have at home. I don't have any discomfort, any pain during my cycle. And for me, this is just a complete evidence of, that the pain has a meaning, and oftentimes chronic pain is connected to trauma. And if you are able to resolve the root of the issue, which for me was the abuse that I went through, then you can completely heal, and recover. And for me, this medicine, the ayahuasca, is a medicine that helps you to go to the root of the problem, and most of my clients who I work with have a similar stories, that they are struggling with something for over a long period of time, and they try this and that, and they went to everybody, and they still have the problem,
Yeah.
and I find that it's because the root is invisible, that you are unconscious of the root, you are not aware of what is the real problem. So of course, how can you heal something that you don't know about? It's impossible. You have to have the awareness first, what is going on, so you can make different choices. And a lot of people, that's where they got stuck, and that's where I was stuck for such a long time. And as I was able to reach the root, and process that, all the symptoms that I had, in my case, the pain that I was dealing with my whole life, it was just simply vanished, from my body. And I have lots of stories, with my clients, like similar stories. So yeah, I just become like devoted, to this path because of my own personal transformation. And I started talking about it. I wrote the book, I started a podcast, all of that. And then people started to come to me and say, hey, I want to do this work, with the medicine. And that's how I started to pivot my practice into psychedelic therapy.
Wow, that's beautiful. I if you would have told me, 5 years ago that we store trauma in our body and a lot of that is connected, a lot of the body pain and chronic illnesses is connected to trauma, I would be like, okay, whatever. But I see it. I see it. I mean, I've actually went through it before, like in the middle of traumatic experience. Like I'll never forget. Um, in the middle of this traumatic experience, I got this pain in my back. And all of a sudden, I mean, it felt like electricity was going through my back. And I carried that until, probably for 3.5 years until I did the work to get rid of that trauma, which I think is incredible, so incredible for, the work that people like you do and help people in healing trauma. So I want to say thank you for what you do. You're doing some incredible work. And for the people that are listening to this show that are unfamiliar with plant medicine, can you briefly tell us what it is and how does it work?
Yes, absolutely. Well, obviously, this is my understanding. So, there's many different perspectives, but for me, psychedelics and sacred plants, they help you to go into like a non-ordinary state of consciousness. And basically what it means that they expand your awareness. So if you think about like your mind as an iceberg, many people are familiar with this metaphor. Only the tip of the iceberg, which is 5%, is your conscious mind. So your conscious mind is that what we are talking now, we are focusing. That's what I mean, conscious mind. And then 95% of your mind is unconscious. So is that the rest of that iceberg is that under the water, right? That means that you are not aware what's in there. You cannot recall, you are not aware of it. So for example, if you grew up in a religious household but you decided not to be religious anymore, you still might have programming or conditioning that says, salvation is through suffering, or money is the root of all evil, like things, dogmas that were programmed, but they are in your unconscious, so you are not aware. You might say, oh, I'm not religious, I don't believe in this kind of things, but in your unconscious mind, there is programs that are that are there and you don't know about, and they are ruling your life. And the reason for that is because they have a bigger power, because it's simply a bigger part of your mind. So it doesn't matter if your conscious mind, you say, hey, I am a money magnet, I love money, like it comes to me easily. If in your unconscious mind there's programs that say that rich people are evil, like money doesn't grow on trees, like money is the root of all evil. So if you have contradicting beliefs, then you're never going to manifest what you want with your conscious mind. So, when we talk about healing, a lot of the root of the problems are in the unconscious mind. So we only aware of the symptoms that are on the surface. Oh, I have a physical pain. Oh, I have this illness. I have problems with my skin all the time. So that's just the surface. That's the symptom of something deeper, and oftentimes I think in healing, it's very hard to go into the unconscious, because a part of you is resisting, doesn't want to go there, doesn't want to rock the boat. So with like classical, like let's say psychotherapy or counseling, you know, it takes such a long time to go deeper into that unconscious and to recover information that is necessary for your healing. That's why people are in therapy for 15 years and have the same problem. But for me, that was not a good enough solution. Like I think the type of healing when you are in healing for 15 years and you're still sick, that's not a good effective method, like it shouldn't be like that. So for me, sacred plants and psychedelics, they rapidly expand your awareness. So that 5% that you are aware of becomes like 50%, subtle. And that's the key with psychedelics, that you are able to access information inside of you that is crucial, so you can resolve something, you can change something, you can make a better decision, you can heal something. You need to access information, you need to discover what is really going on. And this is very difficult with traditional tools like psychology, because when you talk to a therapist, what can you talk about? You can only talk about what you are aware of. You cannot talk about what you're not aware of, right? So you are just staying on the surface, kind of, intellectual masturbating or something, and it's like not much happening, right? And for me, sacred plants help you to expand your awareness and to find, the information that you need in order to move forward with your life in a way that you desire. And this happens a very, very rapid way, So when you are in a plant medicine ceremony, suddenly it's like, wow, suddenly so much information is available to you. That's why people have these incredible experiences. But I have to say that it doesn't stop at the ceremony. After the ceremony, you're still in that expanded state for a good while. And in your integration process, you keep working with that material that surfaced into your awareness, into your conscious awareness during and after the ceremony. And now it's your job to do something about it, to heal it, to release it, to make better choices. And that's absolutely necessary in order to make a difference. So just want to point out that just to go to a ceremony and to have this expansion of awareness, to have this experience in itself probably will not lead long-term sustainable results, that you need to put in your own work, because the plants are not going to do the work for you. What the plants and psychedelics do, they show you what is the problem, what you can do about it. And now it's like, now it's your turn. What do you want? Do you want to change this? Do you want to something different? Then you need to take certain steps in order to embody that and to anchor that into your everyday life, so your life really and truly will change, and not just temporarily but long term.
Do you feel like that brings me to my next question? Do you feel like that is one of the bigger misconceptions when it comes to plant medicine or psychedelic healing, is that it's just going to change overnight?
No, absolutely. That would be, I think, the number one. And I understand, because that's what I thought, like I was so naive at the beginning. I just thought I'm just going to go to the ceremony and then I will be fixed,
Uh,
enlightened, hopefully, and that cannot be further from the truth. And I think our culture as well, especially in the West, is very geared to like fast results. Like they give you this illusion that that is possible, but it is not my experience. I think change takes time, and you have to dedicate yourself, and you have to put conscious effort if you want to change your life. But it sounds good. We want the instant results. We want the magic pill. We are looking for something that will, fix us. But so it's understandable why people approach it this way, but it is just not how things are going. And I think my program is like 15 months, and that is, I think, the shortest amount of time that you need to dedicate in order to create long-term sustainable results. If you work with sacred plants, and that's relatively a short time compared to a lifetime of suffering. If you say, hey, in a little bit than a year you can turn this around, if you really
Yeah.
prioritize this and work on this.
Yeah, and I want to talk. I want to talk a little bit about your program too, because I know our listeners and our viewers, they're going to want to know how they could reach out to you. I was curious. Uh, can you share a powerful story of someone whose life was completely changed through plant medicine? Maybe it's a client. You don't have to say their name, but what is there a story that just like really sticks out to you?
So many, and I really encourage people, if probably we will share my website at one point. I have testimonials, video testimonials on my YouTube channel. But I would mention two of my clients. One of them was a woman who was an Olympic athlete in luge, who had an accident and had to stop competing and doing sports because of an injury. And she had a debilitating anxiety. She was on Xanax for 15 years, and she had an eating disorder that was so bad that it was like affecting her physical body in a very bad way. Her anxiety literally didn't allow her to leave her house, when she came to me. And she was actually my first client. That's always such an inspiration story for my program with the medicine. And like during the 1 year, so when after the ceremony we started going into the deep inner work, what we discovered that the trauma that was creating these symptoms was her first losing her dad when she was a child. Her dad died, and then because she was an athlete, she was taken out from the family at the age of 12, and put into camps. I mean, not camps like concentration camps, but
That's kind of what it is when you're dealing with a lot of these young athletes. They kind of are.
and there is a lot of sexual abuse, especially with girls and from the trainers and stuff. There was a documentary on it with the athletes or the gymnasts in America, I think. So these were the traumas that were creating, and in the integration process, when she had the container and the support, during that process, she was able to process this traumatic experience, and find inner peace and forgiveness and put them into rest. And as a result, the anxiety was gone. She came off the medication. We withdrew in the integration process the medication in very, very slow, controlled way. Um, she had absolutely zero withdrawal. She came off the medication, in a very beautiful way. The eating disorder was completely gone. And this is not something we worked on, that, hey, let's heal the eating disorder. We were working on the underlying issues. And that's what I find a lot of times, that when you address the root issue, there's a spontaneous recovery that happens. It's not something that you need to do, because basically your body the illness is a message to you to say, hey, you need to look here. You need to do something about this. You need to change something here. That's why we have pain. That's why we have chronic disease. And my program is geared to understanding, that message. What does your body wants to say to you through this, and what is that you need to look at and work on? And she did that. So she had like a full recovery within a year from anxiety, from the eating disorder. She said that she didn't think that ever in her life she will be able to heal this, that her best hope was to be able to manage it to an extent when it doesn't cause so much damage to her body and to her everyday life. So for her, the recovery was something, like a true miracle, and she was so impressed that she went to Peru to work with the medicine. And she lived in Peru for 4 years and trained, to serve the medicine, trained with the Shipibo healers in a beautiful center. And she went on managing, ayahuasca retreat center. So, I mean, like, that was just such an amazing, and that was like my first experience with the client, because I had my own experience of, wow, this is amazing, but I don't know, this is something that we can replicate, or this is just happened to me or something. So at this time I was like, no, there is a way, that you can work with it that would apply to every single person. It's not personal to me. Then you can apply this framework to any kind of condition, any kind of disease, any kind of, and basically the framework is, you have like, it's three things. Like, you have the medicine that helps you access information that you need. You have personal guidance, you have a safe container, and you have professional guidance before and after your ceremony. That is very crucial and important, where the deeper healing can happen. And then you have your own willingness and openness and commitment to do this work no matter what, and because you are the main character. So that's what I mean when I'm talking about framework. And that's true. I find this to be true in the last 9 years that I've been running this program with everybody, basically. Another, just very shortly, another amazing thing that I want to share was another client of mine who had epilepsy, and she had epilepsy in her lineage. And her mother had epilepsy. She had epilepsy, but not so bad. She never had a mild seizure, actually. And her daughter had epilepsy, also really bad. So it was definitely something traveling in the lineage. And when she came to me, because epilepsy is contraindicated with medicine, I really looked into, okay, what is the situation here? And I had to talk with people who serve the medicine and who I work with, and my personal teachers and stuff. What it, like, at all she can take medicine, or is there any danger, because it's in her lineage. And even though it never fully manifested for her, and she was on medication for a while, but by the time she came to me, she wasn't on medication for 9 years, and she never had any problems or any seizures. So I was told by the people who are serving the medicine that in her case she can come, and work with the medicine. And again, I just want to, emphasize that these changes don't happen overnight. In her case, this took a couple of years. So the story that I'm telling you right now, this didn't happen in 1 year. She was keep working with this medicine and doing her own inner work. But, I knew that epilepsy on a spiritual level, it signifies that you have some kind of spiritual gift that you are refusing to have. So I told her this at the very beginning, and I was like, do you have any abilities, like psychic abilities, or your family? And she was like, no, not that I know of. And we just left it. We were like, okay, just put this as a side note. And as she was working with the medicine, it all came back to her, that when she was a child, she had this ability that she would take a deep breath in and float out from her body and be above and look down on what's happening, and just observe things. And she could also by willpower, by intention, exhale and come back into her body. Now, this is called astral projection. This is a psychic ability that some people have, and also anybody can develop if you dedicate it, towards this. But some people are born, to be able to do this. And because her mother had, when she was little, her mother was telling her, because she inherited the epilepsy, that if you feel that you are getting dizzy and floating upwards, then you look at your hands and you start affirming, these are my hands. I'm sitting on the chair. I'm looking at the wall to stay here. Her mother wanted to prevent her having a seizure, so her mother, this is something bad. Don't do that. Don't go out. And obviously her mother was, this was in the 50s and the 60s. So imagine the stigma on epilepsy during that time. When you had epilepsy during that time, you thought you are possessed by an evil spirit, that you are a witch, like there was just such a stigma on it, on epilepsy. So it's understandable that her mother was very scared of this, never embraced, the gift that she had. And she was trying to teach her child, of going against the gift, that this is something bad, this is something you shouldn't do. So what happened? She shut down that ability, and in her mind, it was, no, this is bad. This is not a good thing. When she started working with the medicine, she started to realize that, wow, I could do this without medicine. I could go out of my body to go to a different place and look around and come back by will, by intention. And I was told that this is bad, and this now this is healing. This is the medicine, So it started for her, just to embrace her gift and to understand that she has this ability, and this is okay, and this is safe, and she can navigate these different states of being, and she can embrace this. The medicine taught her to embrace. And so
thought it was a disability, but it was actually an ability.
But she was taught that this is something bad and you shouldn't do it, So she obviously doesn't have any seizures or any symptoms of epilepsy. I am really curious to see that her daughter, would have any more symptoms, because her daughter is still on medication. And obviously, I would never say anybody to stop taking medication for a condition. But in theory, when you heal something on your lineage, you heal it upwards and downwards, your ancestors and your descendants, because that's why it is traveling down the lineage. Because let's try. Will you embrace this? Will you resolve this? No? Okay. Next generation. Let's try again. No, So once somebody resolves the issue in the lineage, in theory, there is no need for it to go on, right? Because you understood the message, you acted upon it, you embraced what you needed. And so, yeah, I'm just so excited. And this is just two examples, but I had, I work a lot with people with treatment-resistant depression, debilitating anxiety, trauma, CPTSD, chronic disease. And basically, like, I have like 100% recovery, with my program because as I said, it doesn't matter what the symptom is, if it's a chronic disease or if it's an anxiety or something, because the path to healing, the path to recovery, the path to awareness is the same journey, for everybody. So I never encountered any tools in my practice, in my holistic healing practice before, that would work in such a short time, would bring those breakthrough results. And I think, this is something amazing, and I'm all for it. I'm like, yeah, let's deal with it now. Let's not be in therapy for 10 more years, that I don't like that. Let's just deal with it. But I also have to say that the experience is more intense. It's almost like condensed into a year, what you would do over 15 years. Many people say, oh, it's like one ayahuasca ceremony is like 10 years of therapy. And in a way, it is true, but not one night. But that process, you can do so much. And the reason for that is because if you use other tools like psychology, you're going from the surface, trying to dig down, and every layer you encounter resistance because part of you doesn't want to change. So it takes an extremely long time to break down all the resistance so you can access, root causes of issues. Now with medicines, and especially with the ayahuasca, she breaks down all the resistance and brings you down there. And there you are now, in your dark night.
Mm-hmm.
So, but now you are already there. You saved all this work, that is tedious, digging, and you are already there. And now you can work on it on the root level, and then the recovery is way faster than anything else that I've seen.
Wow. And you have you mentioned, I think you mentioned before, you have a background with psychology. So do you kind of merge the two, and how important is that in your practice right now?
To be honest, and I'm sure some psychologists will be offended, but I find it very incomplete. That framework of psychology, I don't really use it in my practice anymore. Because the main reason for that being is that modern psychology, when looks at the human being, they acknowledge that you have physical body, you have emotions, and you have mind, you have intellect. And they do not acknowledge your spiritual nature, that you are a spiritual being, and
Mm-hmm.
and I think that's a major flaw of this framework. If we go a little bit more alternative, there is a psychology called transpersonal psychology established by Dr. Stanislav Grof, who was a hero in alter healing in alter state and LSD therapy and breath work and all that. So his framework includes the spiritual part. So it's like body, mind, emotions, and the spirit. And I think that that's very crucial because you are a spiritual being and that's your true nature, that's your true essence. And to work with a framework that doesn't acknowledge that is just very limited. And if you look at psychology, I mean, there is such a funny story because one of my childhood friend, we have a very similar life experience, and she also went through childhood sexual abuse that put her on the healing path, and me too. The difference was that I went holistic and alternative and then plant medicine, and she became clinical psychologist. And I didn't put that down because I think a clinical psychology and any kind of psychology has its advantages, and it's definitely useful and helpful in certain cases. But, she still deals with that. She's like in 15 years of analysis. And when we talk about clinical analysis, you go 3 or 4 times per week. Yes. That's what we're not once a week, 3 times a week for 15 years. And she
Wow.
still hasn't processed and put it to rest what happened to her. While I can see my story, which was like a different route, the same story. And, I don't even identify with that story anymore. I'm completely beyond it. It doesn't define me anymore. It doesn't, show up in my life. It's completely, it's done, it's finished, it's over, and I don't even think about it a lot, and every time we meet, she brings it up. So,
Oh.
so I can see also from this perspective that it's just, it's very limited, it's very materialistic, and I think it's extremely important. And the plants, that's one of the gift of the plants, is to help us remember who we are, and that we are spiritual beings, and we are divine beings, and we are beings of love. And that is our true essence, because from that place you can heal, but you cannot heal from a place when you think, oh, I am some wretched sinner,
Yeah. Yeah. No, exactly.
and no matter what I do, I'm just some gullible human. This is not true, and these concepts are part of the obstacles that we encounter in healing, and therefore I think that there are way more effective tools, and in my practice I use tools like somatic practices to work with the body, breath work to help people with emotional release, a technique called compassionate inquiry that was developed by Dr. Gabor Mate, also a pioneer in this field.
I love Dr. Mate.
So I find that, just, and I have like a master's in psychology. So I went through it, and now I have a wider perspective on healing. And that's thanks to plant medicine. My whole understanding of healing completely changed, and my whole understanding of who I am and what is this about is completely changed as a result of working with these plants. And I think it's extremely important that you can reconnect with your essence, and you can reconnect to something bigger than you. And I'm not talking about in a religious way, but I'm talking about more like a spiritual way, because that's the place where you find your power and you find your wisdom.
You're speaking to my soul, Nina. I appreciate you doing this again. This is so good. I just wanted to let you know, and I know we only got a short more time, but I just wanted to affirm that this is some really good stuff, and it's actually given me a lot to think about. I'm in school right now for counseling. I'm working on getting my master's for counseling, and I was initially I was in seminary because that was kind of like the what I thought at the time was the easy path to get that. And I realized while I was going to this faith-based seminary so that I can get my license in counseling, a lot of the things that they were teaching were the things that you were saying was the opposite, were that you, unless you accept XYZ, you are this ratchet person. And it was based out of guilt instead of bringing people up. So that's why I was kind of smiling when you said that, because as soon as I start hearing that kind of stuff, I remember telling my wife or texting her, I am out of here. Like this is not so good. I was curious, do you run across any counselors right now, like active counselors that are practicing with plant medicine?
Yes, I have a supervision program that supports people who work in the plant medicine space. So either serve medicine, support circles, or do integration. And I have several people who are either psychologists or counselors who are pivoting into psychedelic therapy, and they are in my program. And I think that's great. I think that's a great basis. I come from that basis too. And it's important that I'm aware of psychology and I have a good knowledge about it, because I can explain people the difference, and
Yeah.
explain people, better things. I can relate people who come from that kind of framework. So I do believe that it's a good foundation, for psychedelic healing work, if you have any kind of conventional therapy training, psychology, counseling, so on and so forth, because it gives you a good basic understanding. And a lot of people come from there, so you can connect with them and relate to them. And you can use elements that are very useful and effective. And probably I use also elements of it. It's so indirect, but I do not
Yeah.
register anymore because I've been trained in so many things. It's hard to distinguish. But yeah, I'm very excited. We just started launching our training program, like actually last year, to train integration therapist for plant medicine, because I think it's such a niche, and we don't have training here. So yourself, if you want to be in service, you have to go to that kind of training, because there's almost non-existent trainings, right now in this field. And this is something that we need to get on, because it's a different, I always say to people when they come to me and they are like, oh, I don't know if I should come to you or somebody who is a licensed, psychotherapist or something like that. And I always say to people that the most important is that the therapists have personal experience. They might be a psychotherapist or counselor or whatever, but if they don't have personal experience, they're not going to be able to help you. It doesn't matter what kind of certificates they have, simply because you cannot take people where you never been. You just can't. It's impossible. Like, how can you navigate a reality that you are completely unaware of? You have no personal experience. And how can you understand what somebody is going through, who went there, who went to the other side, right?
Yeah.
So I think that's the most important, whatever kind of training you are doing, it's a good start. And then to do your own work, to do your own work. And I think this is of course important to any therapist, but I think with plant medicine is just crucial. You need to do going, and I just came back from a retreat like last week, where I was working with my teacher with multiple medicines, and this is something that I keep doing, because there is always so much more to learn and to evolve. And also, the medicine, and this is something that I want to share, that if you don't do your inner work, if you want to bypass that inner work, what the medicine does, it amplifies everything in you. So it will amplify your ego and your narcissistic tendencies. And I've seen so many people who went into that direction, so you cannot bypass, and it can make your life worse, if you're not, using it in a responsible and sacred way, so this is definitely not a joke. And that's why you need personal experience to go through, all the challenges, all the pitfalls, so you can help other people to navigate.
Yeah, thank you for sharing that. I know the folks that are watching this and listening to this, they're like, "Oh man, I'm ready. I'm ready. Sign me up." Can you briefly tell me what people should know before considering plant medicine for healing, and what are some mistakes do people make during this process?
Well, I think the biggest one that we mentioned, that they think that the medicine will heal them and they just have to go to a ceremony or a retreat. And this is not true. So what I would like to say, that if you're serious about this, you need to make space in your life and prioritize this journey for a period of time. If you are not able to do that, maybe it's not the right time for you. Maybe it's not the right path for you, because you are the healer. Nobody can heal you if you do not prioritize yourself and say, this is the most important thing in my life right now, because I suffer so much that I just willing to do anything I can, to get better and to change. Then nothing will help you, so you need to make space in your life, and you need to have support, especially if you are first timer. And that's why I launched this program. If you read my book, there's my whole story, how I did all the mistakes at the beginning that you can do in the planet. Everything I did, like it, and I ended up in a spiritual emergency, and I thought I'm gonna lose my mind and end up in some loony bin, like somewhere. And I was very fortunate that I had some people around me who could help me through that period of time, who were familiar with the experience I was going through and the medicine and all that, So it's extremely important that you have support. You need support, and not just in the ceremony, but you need support before, to do responsible preparation, because I have so many people who find me on the internet who went to ceremonies that were not held in integrity, that were not safe, that were people didn't know what they are doing. This is extremely dangerous. I had people with possessing entities, driving them crazy, you can die. Like,
Yeah.
okay, I just say that this is not a joke. So it's extremely, extremely important that you know what you're heading into, and you know how to choose a safe place. Do you have professional guidance to help you to choose a safe place, to have a safe experience with integrity and a highest standard of ethics? And it's extremely important that you have container and support after in the integration process, especially at the beginning. Once you did this, once you are familiar with the whole process, and you went through it, you don't necessarily need that help anymore, because you have experience, you have understanding. But if you're a beginner, and if you're serious about it, the best that you can do for yourself is to have professional support and guidance throughout the first experience, so you really understand how to work with these plants, and how to take the best out of your experience. And then another thing I would say is what is very common, that people go to ceremony, especially ayahuasca, and we have a word for it. We call it the ayahuasca afterglow. That
Hmm.
this nice time after. Normally, not everybody, but in general, people are high, and oh, it's like so good. I love everybody. They have no symptoms of whatever they are dealing with. This lasts about 4 to 6 weeks. And then you start heading into your shadow work, into your dark night, into your underworld, and the medicine will start pushing to the surface what you need to deal with, what you need to look at. And a lot of people, when they reach this point, because of the lack of awareness, they think, oh, I was feeling so great and I'm feeling crap again, so I need to go to another ceremony. And that kind of bypassing is very common. So, and that's not what you need to do. What you need to do is to get a therapist and go into your personal deep healing work, because now it's coming up, what you need to look at. And if you want to bypass this work of going to ceremonies all the time, of I'm not going to deal with that. I just want to feel good for a couple of weeks. And when it wears off, I'm just going for another ceremony.
Right.
That will happen. You will compile this. And I always say to people, imagine you're opening a door. Things start to come out of that door, but you ignore that, and then you open another door. Things start to come out, and you open 10 doors, and at one point it will overwhelm you. And that's when people get into spiritual emergency and crisis situations, because they drank so much medicine and they didn't process their experience, and suddenly it just hits them, all at once. So these plants, these substances are extremely powerful, especially DMT. I am not a fan of drinking a lot of medicine. I think that the only reason why you drink a lot of medicine, if you are in training to serve the medicine, and apart
Mm.
from that, you don't need a lot of medicine, because this is extremely powerful tool and ally. What you need is to act upon what you learned, from your experience. And that's not so easy to do, because people know they shouldn't eat in the McDonald's because it's junk, but they still do it, So just because you have awareness of what you should do, that doesn't mean that you're going to act upon it. And that's what the integration helps you with.
Yeah. Are there any health conditions that people have that shouldn't partake in the medicine?
Mental conditions such as schizophrenia is definitely contraindicated. I would say some cases can be bipolar depression or borderline, but these are more gray areas. But I would say definitely schizophrenia or acute psychosis would be something that is contraindicated. However, because I have a very close dear friend who has schizophrenia, I looked into this, and I do believe that plant could help him, but we would need to find somebody who has experience with this type of condition, So in generally speaking, I would say schizophrenia and psychosis, no. And then there is a bunch of medications such as SSRIs and benzodiazepines and all this kind of stuff that you need to get. Well, basically, you need to get off of all kinds of medication before the ceremony. So, but that's something that you can work with a professional therapist, and that's why you need the preparation to withdraw any medication that might be contraindicated of taking this medicine. But yeah, the main reason for the schizophrenia is just that the mind of these people is already so fragmented that it can, for in theory, the medicine can further fragment them instead of helping them bring them together. But as I said, I think it just depends on your guide and the container. And if you could find a proper container and somebody who has confidence in guiding you, in this, that it possibly could work. Also, like, pregnancy can be a question mark. I had lots of friends who drank medicine while they were pregnant, obviously much less medicine because it's purgative, so there is a risk of miscarriage. So you have to be extremely mindful and consult with the people who serve the medicine. And then different traditions have different approaches regarding kids. Some, for example, in the Shipibo tradition, they don't allow kids in the ceremony, but in the Santa Daime, they allow kids, to participate in ceremony and even to have medicine. So it's depends kind of the tradition. Hmm.
Thank you for giving that disclaimer. I love it, and I again I appreciate you for doing this. Where can the listeners and the viewers find you if they want to know more information about plant medicine and integration and everything that we talked about? Where can they go?
Yes, my website is avatarhealingart.com, and you will find just so much resources there. I have a lot of free resources. I write for several psychedelic platforms. I have my own blog, and I write about the integration. I write about healing in general. So you can access that information there. I have a podcast called Ayahuasca Avatars, and that's like a conversation style like yours, where I talk to other practitioners who work with plant medicine, and also people who just share their own story with plant medicine to educate people and to raise more awareness how to work in a responsible way with these sacred plants. I have a free ebook if you go on my website about plant medicine safety. So if you're thinking of doing something like this, please go and download that book, because everything I wish I would have known before I went into my ceremony 13 years ago, I put in that book for you, so you can be safe and you can go to the right place for your experience. And yeah, I have, you can follow me on social media. So just go on my website and look through it. And I have so much resources, and most of them, as I said, is free of charge. So you can access them there.
Is there anything that you want to say to the folks that maybe I didn't ask you, or you feel like that they need to know?
That you are the healer and love is the medicine. That's kind of my tagline, and that's something the medicine, helped me to understand on a deeper level, that you are the creator of your reality, and that means you are your own healer, that we are our biggest enemies, and we are our biggest cheerleaders, so to say, and it's all within you. And all my life, I was looking for answers outside of me, and plant medicine really changed that direction, and made me aware that everything is available for you within, if you go on this journey, and you have all the power and all the resources to heal yourself, to change your life. And the real medicine is love, and yeah, that's the medicine, my book called Heart Medicine, because this medicine is there to help us to open our heart and to walk with an open heart, in this world. And that's the biggest blessing of this medicine.
You doing this episode, it really affirmed something for me. It let me know that I am on the right track and the right direction with our show. Man, my heart, just like everything that you were saying as far as healing, I really resonated with that, especially the part of you doing the work, you being the healer and not relying on any type of medicine really, or any other person or entity as you that have to do the work. And that really resonated with me. You're right now, I'm going to say you're one of my favorite guests of all time on this show. And I know that, there's going to be so many people that are just blessed to hear this, just like I was blessed to do this interview. So thank you so much for being a part of this show.
Tony, it was absolute pleasure to connect with you and be on your podcast. And I trust that this message will reach whoever needs to hear it.
Thank you for allowing me to travel with you on your journey. I want to say thank you for the things that you're doing, the things that you've done, and the things that you're gonna do, because I know that you're gonna do something truly amazing. Remember, I'm here to stand by you as you chase your dreams, lead with greatness, and continue to make a difference. Don't forget to subscribe to the podcast so that you can be notified every time we drop a new episode. I'll see you next time on Leaders Lead the Podcast. Peace.